So another prompting technique, you've probably heard of it, is called few shot prompting. And you've probably used it before where, you asked the model to complete a task like summarize some text, and then you gave it some instructions, and then to help the model output in a format you desire, you gave it an example. And so in this video, I want to show how we can do that using GPT 3.5 Turbo in the OpenAI suite. So in our previous example, we wanted to be able to summarize the text that we had here that explained temperature and top P as hyperparameters of an OpenAI language model. And we did it, but for some reason, the explanation, we asked it to explain it like it would explain it to a 6-year-old, and the explanation, it was different than the AI engineer, but it wasn't proportionately different. It should have been way more simpler. In this example, what I did was I used a completely different text that I want to have summarized. I said, summarize the following text delimited by triple backticks. This is text that was generated, an explanation of what an embedding model is in AI, in OpenAI, or in AI in general. This text was generated by GPT-4, a more advanced model. I gave it the same instructions that I did beforehand, and then here is an example of how GPT-4 explained this like it was explaining it to a 6-year-old. And as you can see, it said it's like an embedding model, and AI is like a big magical box that turns hard and complicated things into simpler things. It can change a big fancy word into a much simpler idea. This magic box helps a computer understand words and sentences better, just like how you learn and understand new things. Now, is this like the best is the 6-year-old going to have an understanding of what an embedding model is? Probably not. Is it realistic for a 6-year-old to understand an embedding model? Probably not. But this is on a reading level that a 6-year-old could probably understand, and is more better proportionately. How do we incorporate this example right here, how we want the model to explain something or summarize it, and so that it can explain and summarize temperature and top P to a 6-year-old as well? Well, in the messages, we can actually pass in a list of messages. So I use the first paragraph example right here as the first user message, and I set the role to be user. This is how you can do that. And then I set the assistant, or the model, that's what the model is, the assistant's answer to be the explanation. And so the model itself is going to have this as input. It's going to see that the user asked it to summarize this example paragraph, and that it explained that paragraph this way. And then I'm going to pass in the original prompt that we had for our temperature and top P explanation. I'm going to pass it in the same way, and I'm going to say explain it to a 6-year-old. And as you'll see, our response is a lot more proportionate to what a 6-year-old would be able to understand. It said temperature and top P are like buttons that control how random or predictable a computer's writing is. Temperature makes everything more equal and random, while top P only lets the computer choose from the most likely words. You can use these buttons to make the computer write in different ways, etc. One thing that makes this more likely that a 6-year-old will be able to understand is that they're like buttons, and they really are. That's actually a pretty good explanation. I mean, these are parameters that we could pass into this model, like we just passed in temperature, and we were able to turn the knob on it and change the random variation in a model's responses. And so you can really think of them as buttons. I would say they're more like knobs that you can turn, but if I'm explaining this to a 6-year-old, buttons is actually a pretty good explanation. And so that's an example on how we can use few shot prompting to improve a model's response on something that it didn't do so well on 0-shot prompting.